Hey everyone, welcome back to the Nathaniel Ahart Company's Top 100 Greatest Films of All Time. I can't believe that we have finally, after all this time, made it into the top 10. Obviously, we're splitting this up over 2 episodes, and because of that, we're bringing in more than one guest. And today, I have the honor and the privilege of having my very good friends, Brandon Fallat and Louis Galarza, on this countdown. How are we doing, guys?
I'm doing excellent, Nathaniel. Thanks for having me.
You're doing good, Brandon.
Wait, okay, I'll start and then you can cut. Okay. Hey, yeah, what's up, man? I'm doing good.
All right. Well, look,
Okay.
I'm just really glad to have you guys on the discussion today because, obviously these guys are super, super knowledgeable, and we're going to really get into these films here, films that I know we all know and love. So yeah, let's not waste any time and finally start cracking into the top 10, starting with number 10.
Luke Skywalker and Han Solo rescued the princess, destroyed the Death Star, but their story didn't end there. Now, the creators of the biggest smash hit of all time bring you the next episode in the Star Wars saga, The Empire Strikes Back. Continuing story of our band of heroes: Luke Skywalker, Princess Leia, Han Solo, C-3PO, R2-D2, and Chewbacca. And introducing Lando Calrissian.
The Empire Strikes Back from 1980, directed by Irvin Kershner. Look, obviously Return of the Jedi already made the list. You knew Star Wars was going to be on the list, and you haven't seen it in the past few episodes, so you guys are probably like, okay, obviously this makes the top 10. And this is in my personal top 10. I probably have this around I think this is number 8 for me of all time. So honestly, this is perfectly placed, and let me tell you, this is one of the greatest movies of all time. Talk about a sequel that really took things to the next level. I can't believe, and I know we were kind of talking about this with other 80s movies like The Thing and The Shining, where it wasn't, and granted, it wasn't as polarizing as those movies, but this got mixed reviews when it came out in theaters, which is beyond me, because like this really took Star Wars, a very, very fun and lighthearted film in general that had its darker moments, right? And really just ramped things up to a 10, really put these characters in very, comparable situations and really reached the depths that I think was almost lacking from the first one. Not in its entirety, but obviously not to the level that they achieved with this sequel here. And my goodness, talk about one of the best sequels of all time. You have to throw this in the argument. But just the way they take these characters of Luke, Leia, Han, and really push them to the next level while introducing Darth Vader as an even more terrifying and dominant force to be reckoned with here. I mean, this really is where you find out how much of a powerful force that Vader is in this universe, and just every interaction he has with the his imperial underlings, it really establishes his terrifying rule, and just how he will stop at nothing to get to Luke, and just how manipulative, how much of a masterful strategist he is to achieve what he wants throughout this entire story. Just one of the best villains of all time. I think everybody knows that. He's so iconic. And of course, John Williams once again bringing in another incredible score, obviously introducing the Imperial theme to everybody, and we all know it and love it at this point in time. It's hard to believe it wasn't even the first movie. But just the new additions to the story, like Yoda. I mean, my goodness, what a staple in popular culture. And I just love how he's introduced, like the way he kind of teases Luke. and you kind of see him try to trick him into thinking he's like this, kind of like weirdo old man, which he kind of is, but obviously he's playing it dumb until he tests him and reveals his true intentions as the Jedi Master that he is. And so many iconic quotes from this movie, especially from Yoda, like, do or do not. There is no try. Like, all that stuff. Everybody knows it. Everybody loves it.
Really good.
Thank you. I just did that on the spot. No, but just so many amazing moments of character development. Of course, the relationship in between Han and Leia kind of evolving to its volcanic peak in this story. But my goodness, how can you not love the dynamic between Luke and Yoda, and of course Luke and Vader, in one of the most compelling, one of the most beautifully shot and beautifully lit final climaxes ever put to film. Just the hues of the blue and the red lightsabers just clashing amongst the fog rising up out of Cloud City. And of course, I'm going to spoil this movie because everybody knows the plot twist in this movie with Vader being Luke's father. Mind blowing to audiences back then, maybe not so much to us now, but still one of the greatest and most monumental plot twists in the history of cinema, and really put this universe at a whole other level, like I was saying. And of course, I forgot to mention Billy D. Williams, man, as Lando Calrissian. Oh my goodness, gotta love that character and how he's used in the story. It's just so dark, so complex, as I said, and really took this series to emotional heights that had never been reached before, and I don't think they've ever reached again. This is the best Star Wars film, and I'm glad to see it in the top 10.
Yeah, I mean, you said it. I mean, yeah, it's a movie that a lot of blockbusters take a lot of notes from in terms of like upping the stakes in like pretty much every way, and obviously like super iconic. I haven't seen it in a bit, but I imagine if I watch it again now, I'd probably be like pointing stuff out in every scene, go like, oh yeah, that's like an iconic thing. That's an iconic thing. Yeah, you said it.
I think what's interesting about it is that when you think of the first Star Wars movie, and I think arguably all of the other films after The Empire Strikes Back, they're mostly referred to as great blockbusters or great movies. And I do think The Empire Strikes Back is the one that is universally considered a great film. In a way, you could say that it's because of The Empire Strikes Back that Star Wars is what it is now, to where you have Star Wars Celebration that occurs every few years. Like, I think that's the movie that kind of cemented it as, it wasn't a one-off, and it kind of upped the stakes, obviously, and it took risks, and then it ended on a down note, which I think is probably the best thing about the film, is that it ends on just a straight up loss. But yeah, no, I think it's definitely like the best film of the Star Wars series. Second only to Revenge of the Sith, which I'm looking forward to seeing at number 8.
Well, I don't think that's going to be even at number 9. But still, look, I mean, obviously this is just so big. Like you said, just the way they edited this film, I think maybe that was one of the reasons people weren't as big on it, because they didn't have the movies like we did, where we could just like sit down and like, let's sit down and go to Return of the Jedi. Like, they had to wait all the. Not that I'm saying that's a reason you should knock a movie for not being good, but I think they weren't really aware of what they were doing and where they were going with the story. Maybe George Lucas wasn't either, as we learned to find out in some regard. But yeah, just the fact Luke loses his hand, they barely get away from Vader in Cloud City, Han's frozen in the carbonite, and just them staring off into space, not knowing what is going to happen next. It's one of the greatest endings to any movie of all time, and I think that's another reason why it retains so much power after all this time, coupled with the John Williams score and Irwin Kershner's brilliant direction. It's sad to see him not really direct anything as substantial again after this, but he really knocked it out of the park. And of course, Lee Brackett with her last script, with the amazing dialogue, which really once again put this a step above the original, if you ask me. And I think that will perfectly segue into number 9.
Luke Skywalker was just a farm boy until he received a mysterious message from a princess.
Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi.
She's beautiful.
Star Wars, starring Mark Hamill,
I'm Luke Skywalker. I'm here to rescue you.
Aren't you a little short for a stormtrooper?
Harrison Ford,
Boring conversation anyway. Luke, we're gonna have company! I think we took a wrong turn.
Carrie Fisher,
Good luck.
Alec Guinness,
You can't win, Darth. If you strike me down, I shall become more powerful than you can possibly imagine.
20th Century Fox presents the most extraordinary motion picture of all time, Star Wars.
Here's where the fun begins.
No legendary adventure of the past could be as exciting as this romance of the future.
Here they come.
May the Force be with you in Star Wars.
Star Wars, directed by George Lucas from 1977. Well, this couldn't have worked out any better. Both the first two Star Wars films in the top 10. Obviously, everyone loves Star Wars if Return of the Jedi made the list, right? And as I said, Empire's better. I think most people agree, but somehow maybe you guys don't, because this made it just the spot above. I think there was not much of a point difference between this, so it could have gone either way. But I could see why this one ended up above Empire, just on cultural impact, right? Because this is one of the movies, along with Jaws, which you're talking about, that really changed everything, that everybody was talking about when it came out. And not only was it a cultural phenomenon, but it was also a technological one as well, really pushing what could be done, taking what Stanley Kubrick did with 2001: A Space Odyssey with the practical models and putting it in an action-adventure landscape, which is certainly more accessible to the mainstream than 2001. And maybe that's why it's a bit higher on this list. I don't know. 2001's better. I'm sure you guys agree. But regardless, I cannot overstate just how impactful this film was when it came out and introduced us to so many iconic characters we already mentioned, like Luke Skywalker, Princess Leia, Han Solo, Chewbacca, C-3PO, R2-D2, of course Obi-Wan Kenobi, played by the legendary Sir Alec Guinness, in an Oscar-nominated performance. And really, he's acting circles around these guys. Let's be honest. Whenever he's on screen, it's absolutely incredible. And look, you could knock this movie for some of its, kind of stilted and kind of like awkward dialogue, or the fact that maybe Mark Hamill wasn't as great of an actor as he was in the next movie, and onward. But to me, I just kind of throw those problems out the window, because this is just, obviously, I think the greatest film score of all time, just beat for beat, how it's utilized in the story. John Williams' Academy Award-winning score here. Really, obviously, he took off with Jaws, but this cemented him as a legend. And I think most people agree that this is his finest achievement in his career, which is saying a lot, because he's still, going strong to this day. But my goodness, how can you not love the themes in here, whether it be the Mos Eisley Cantina theme, or the Princess Leia theme, which is so beautiful, or, the Binary Sunset theme. Just, my goodness, one of the greatest shots in all of cinema, that it just brings a tear to my eye every time I see it, when Luke is staring out at the Binary Sunset. And you just hear the score swelling up, and he's looking out towards something. So he knows that there's something out there for him, but he doesn't know what it is. There's something beyond Tatooine, which I think the creators of the series have forgotten over time. But really, it's just amazing what they do in this film, how they introduce these characters, how they introduce the setting. Really so groundbreaking, as I said, from a visual standpoint, and really obviously took a lot from Kurosawa. With taking the first 15 minutes of Hidden Fortress and basically copying and pasting it, and changing a few things around, but just so influential on so many people. Like, how many, I can't tell you how many people I've run into who said, oh, Star Wars was such a huge influence on me. It's just such a well-made action adventure film. Of course, with the Death Star trench run at the end as well is just so amazing. The tension that they create. This is a film that was saved in the editing room, and we got to give Paul Hirsch a lot of credit for that, because I don't, it makes sense that George Lucas was nominated for Best Director, but should he have been? I don't know. But regardless, this is like one of the most iconic films of all time. So while I wouldn't have it personally in my top 10, I had it a bit closer to, my top 50. This is still an iconic masterpiece, and it has to be on the list.
Yeah, I'd say it's actually probably my favorite Star Wars movie.
Really?
Yeah, well, first of all, I guess I should say I'm not like the biggest Star Wars fan. I really like Star Wars, but I'm probably not as big of a fan as others. But yeah, it's always been my favorite just because, at least from the original trilogy, it's the one that has like the best sense of adventure for me. And I even like down to the mistakes that you had mentioned, like sort of like the stilted dialogue and like the performances, like here and there, little details here and there, like certain shots that are like really flat and kind of like the Obi-Wan versus Darth Vader like lightsaber scene. Obviously, a lot of people make fun of that. I think all of that honestly adds to the charm.
Sure.
And like I specifically, I don't know why I always think about this, but the trash compactor scene when they're in there,
yeah.
I always imagine myself like being in the theater for moments like that, like just and like who was it, 77 this came out?
Yeah.
I always imagine being in the theater for that and just being like, wow, like what is this? Like I haven't seen like anything like this before. Yeah, I've always loved the original Star Wars. That's always been my favorite.
I gotta be careful what I say here because I literally just said, yeah, the other Star Wars movies were good blockbusters, but Empire Strikes Back was a great film, and now I'm about to flip and be like, well, I love the simplicity of the original Star Wars and how it's really economic. But
well, just to interject for a second, Brandon, like I feel like this one too, people say is a great film. Besides a few things here or there.
Yeah, no, I think it's a perfect blockbuster. I think it's awesome. It's the film that inspired generations of YouTube channels and video essays for years to come. But no, I think it's fantastic. I don't see any problems with it. I think everything that you could say is dated or stilted about it, I think definitely adds to I'm just gonna repeat what Lou said, adds to the charm of it. And no, I think it's awesome. It was the archetype for the hero's journey that is still being replicated today. And and then it leads to a perfect closure when you have a film like Rise of Skywalker that ends with that binary sunset. When you have Rey acknowledging that she's a Skywalker, looking out into the unknown, it's a similar effect, and I think it can it connects the whole saga, the whole Skywalker saga in a way. So I'm if that original 77 film is what got us to the 29th, I don't know what I'm saying.
I was waiting. I'm like, is this man playing me? No, but look, in all honesty, though, one other thing I do want to mention, I think you guys can agree, probably the best world building in any film.
Yeah,
I can't believe, like, just the costume designs, the set. Another reason why it's so influential is it's just all these things that came out of the mind of George Lucas is just incredible. Like, nobody was thinking of this now, and then everybody's trying to replicate that now at Lucasfilm, and sometimes they're doing a good job. I still have to see Andor, which I hear is really great. Kind of maybe a throwback to that style with a bit of espionage, but I really love what they did here. And also one of the most quotable movies of all time too is like, you don't need to see the identification, like all that stuff, and so many iconic quotes. You gotta love this movie, whether it's your favorite Star Wars movie, that's fine, but obviously I feel like it is a lot of people's favorites here, like Lewis said. And, glad to see it on the list. It makes sense that it's in the top 10, especially if we're talking about the most iconic films of all time. Star Wars definitely deserves to be this high on the list. So amazing choice once again. And that now is going to take us to number 8.
There's a plane waiting for us to take us to Miami in an hour. All right. Don't make a big thing about it. I know it was you, Fredo. You broke my heart. You broke my heart.
The Godfather Part 2 from 1974, directed by Francis Ford Coppola. I mean, if you didn't see it before, you had a feeling, just like with the Star Wars movies, it had to show up. And look, yet again, we were saying this about Empire Strikes Back. I have this, if we're talking about sequels, I have this above Godfather 2, but easily one of the greatest sequels ever made, especially considering how successful the first one was, how it was lauded as a masterpiece in filmmaking, how it won Best Picture, right? And then they gave Francis Ford Coppola all this money, all the money that he needed to make the sequel. And this was really the only time in Francis Ford's career that he had all this money, that the studio was 100% completely behind it. Because like we were talking about with Apocalypse Now, he had to fund a lot of that out of pocket. And also he lost a lot of money on that production, obviously, you know, considering its torturous sort of history. But this really was one of the few times where there wasn't any sort of, you know, financial burdens, you know, batting against him, and he was still able to create this masterful story with Mario Puzo, to obviously the story of Michael Corleone, and what I think is Al Pacino's greatest performance. My goodness, the way you see this character devolve over these two films is just, it's astounding, and I think here especially it all comes to head, seeing where they take Michael on the story. And the thing I love about Pacino, just in general, but especially in these first two movies, is just his eyes. Like, you really see, especially throughout this story, like, his eyes get narrower and narrower as the story goes along, and you see him being consumed by evil, but yet he's so controlled and he's so calculating, and I think that's what makes Michael such a terrifying villain. You never know what he's going to do, and he's always tries to be one step ahead of the next person, and I think this is why it's so interesting, seeing his story contrasted with his father's. Vito, played by a young Robert De Niro in this, which won him an Academy Award, which obviously, you know, stepping into the shoes of Marlon Brando, I mean, that's a pretty heady task, but De Niro aced it with flying colors. Really such a subtle and subdued performance, but he really captures the essence of Vito Corleone as a character. And I love just like the cuts that they'll make in this film and connect the two narratives in a very, very intellectual sort of way. And they really pick the right spots. Just when you're like maybe getting a little disinterested in one story, they'll put you right back into the other one, and then you're like, okay, like this is exactly the timing that I wanted. It's so perfectly paced, except near the end. I still think this movie's a masterpiece, but you could say it goes on a little bit too long, at over around 3.5 hours. But I love how one story is about this man's, like you see Vito, and he was all about family. Like, he made choices based on what his family did. He never did it for himself, while every choice that Michael makes is made out of self-preservation. And I think that's which makes this sequel prequel so compelling, is because of that. But of course the cast as well. I think Diane Keaton is amazing in this film. I'm not sure how she wasn't nominated for an Oscar for this, because she's absolutely incredible. But you have to mention, of course, Michael Vigazzo as Frank Patangeline, who steals every scene he's in, and an integral part in this film. So amazing. And of course Lee Strasberg, the legendary Lee Strasberg as Hyman Roth, who really is Michael's biggest opposition. And of course, where that iconic line comes, keep your friends close, but your enemies closer. I think it's followed to a T, especially with his character. And of course, you got to mention, now I'm forgetting, but bear with me, I'll come back around to it. But regardless, of course, John Cazale as Fredo Corleone. This really is, this is where he gets the most time to shine. I think he should have been nominated for this too, even though like they already had like 3 actors nominated for this movie. They could have gone 4 in supporting actor and would have been fine, because Fredo is really the character you learn about him a little bit in the first one, but just seeing his tragic story unfold in this film, you really have a lot of sympathy for this character, despite a lot of clumsy and stupid decisions that he makes. He really is someone you can sympathize for, and the relationship between him and Michael really drives us entire. Of course, that moment, it's like, you broke my heart, Fredo. You know, like, oh my goodness, one of the most heartbreaking moments in all of film. But look, it's just amazing the depths that they're able to take this story, considering how amazing the first one is. This is an example. This really was the first sequel. And I think maybe that's another reason, besides the fact that it's technically such a brilliant film, why it's as high on this list. Because it basically changed the entire game and won Best Picture once again. The first sequel to win that award, and deservedly so. He had an amazing year with this in The Conversation, which I wish made the list, but unfortunately didn't end up making the cut. But gotta have Godfather Part 2. I had this a bit lower. But my goodness, this is one of the greatest films of all time, and I can't blame anyone for having it this high on the list.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have like too much else to add, honestly. I haven't seen it in a bit, but I don't really need to see it to know, like, or to at least remember, like, everything in it is like pretty amazing, as you said. It's funny actually. You talked about Empire Strikes Back, which like kind of set the foundation for like a bunch of sequels to come. But Godfather 2, I would say, isn't influential enough. I feel like that structure it uses, like the prequel sequel structure and like cutting back and forth, I feel like isn't used enough. I think more sequels should do that. I think that's like such an ingenious thing that they decided on, and it sucks when I see like more modern sequels that, well, they do have like flashback sequences. Don't just like go like all the way and just do something like that. Yeah, I mean, I still let Brandon talk. I really don't have that much to say about Godfather 2. Like, nothing new to say, really.
Yeah, I think it's either perfectly placed, or I would have put it a few slots higher.
Really? Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
I think I'm with you. I think I prefer it to the first one as well.
Really? I don't prefer it, but but that's okay.
That.
No. Empire I prefer to Star Wars, but I just said it goes on a little long at the end.
I'm only selectively listening to what proves my narrative. No, yeah, I think I do prefer this to the original Godfather slightly. I think it's a perfect film. I love the prequel sequel take. I think that is a genius take to it done with. But Pacino, I think, gives one of the great acting performances ever in this one.
Yeah, top 10 for sure.
I think this one ups the stakes, and I think it's, I don't really have much to say about it either, because I think you hit the nail on the head pretty perfectly, with what you said. But I think it's pretty, I would say it's perfectly placed. I don't think I could think of a couple more. I don't know. I'm trying to think of something.
No, that's completely fine, man. Hey, just be sure to chime in if you come up with anything. But I do want to mention, like, once again, like, I don't know how Al Pacino didn't win an Oscar for this. Like, this should have won a role, but yet again, it was another case where the Academy wanted to give it to Art Carney, who drove around on a tractor with his cat or something, as opposed to this iconic and legendary performance, which, as I said, I would put in the top 10 greatest performances of all time, and I certainly think, and I don't know if you guys agree, but I do think it's Pacino's best.
I would probably too.
Yeah, but just amazing what he was doing in the 70s, and just amazing what Francis Ford Coppola did in the 70s alone.
Oh, that streak.
Yeah, it's just incredible.
Godfather, Conversation. No, what was it?
It was Godfather, Conversation, Godfather 2. In that, or maybe those two switch, and then Apocalypse Now and some other stuff.
Yeah, that's crazy.
But really, those four films really made him the legend that he is. And hey, he's still out there. He just turned 84 years old. Still out there putting in the work. So got to give Coppola a lot of credit.
He just got done with filming his new one. Was it Megalopolis or whatever?
He did.
Yeah.
That's done.
I believe so. Yeah.
Oh my goodness! I can't wait to see that. I really hope he has one more last magnum opus in him, like he did in the 70s.
It's supposed to be a big one, so hopefully, yeah.
Yeah, because he's been talking about this for years. But regardless, I mean, this really it can't go understated. This influence, this structure, and really set the template for what a sequel is. Because as we said, there weren't really any before this, besides a couple here or there. But this really broke the door open, maybe for better or for worse. But we could talk about that a bit later. But obviously, an amazing, amazing choice on this list. Once again, an absolute masterpiece. And that now is going to take us to number 7. Psycho, from 1960, directed by, of course, Alfred Hitchcock. And look, obviously, this is the third Hitchcock film on the list and the highest, as well as being probably the highest horror film on this list. And look, this is like what we were saying with a couple of the other movies where it wasn't really initially received as well when it came out. And of course, I know The Godfather Part 2 won Best Picture, but I did hear it got like mixed reviews. And obviously, we look back now and we're like, well, yeah, obviously, it's amazing. But I don't think people knew how to take this film when it came out. And I think partially that's because of how boundary pushing Alfred Hitchcock was as a filmmaker. I mean, especially with the Hays Code at the time, like he was doing things that nobody was doing. He was finding his way to work around it with the separated kissing scenes and like Notorious and stuff. But this was the first one he didn't make under the supervision of a Hays Code, and because of that, we got the first instance of a flushing toilet on film, which would later be replicated by many movies, including Daddy Daycare. I don't know why I brought that movie up when I'm talking about Psycho, but it is true. And look,
glad that was what's on your mind.
Yes, I always
say the
remember
same thing, Daddy Daycare.
Yeah, no, I always remember when I was a kid, like the scene where the kid's peeing and they cut out "I'm walking on sunshine" and then they go back to. Anyway, I don't need to talk about that movie any longer. But basically, so many boundaries that this film is, especially right from the beginning, with of course that amazing Bernard Herrmann score, which I think might as well be his best and most iconic. But just from the beginning, you see this woman, of course, played by Janet Leigh. Having this affair with a married man, right? And that was very taboo at the time, because remember, this came out in 1960. Like, people weren't showing this kind of thing on film. And then, of course, the whole plot kicks off. But you really see there's a lot of, I wouldn't say sexual perversion, because that might not be the right wording, but there was a sexuality to this movie that was not really tapped into until Hitchcock came in and showed this off. And of course, sequences of nudity, of course it wasn't as graphic as it was later become, but he really pushed the boundary and the envelope with what you could show and do in films like that. And of course the use of blood as well, of course, coming all to head in that brilliant iconic shower scene which we were showing there earlier. Obviously, just one of the most iconic scenes in all of film, especially in all of horror. You can't really top that. And of course, just the performances. Janet Leigh, who was nominated for playing Lila Crane in this, amazing what she does. But to me, one of the greatest performances of all time is Anthony Perkins as Norman Bates, in one of the most complex characters and villains ever put to film. Because I mean, obviously, I think you all know at this point the moments from Psycho, and so I don't feel like I'm really spoiling too much. But just the way Hitchcock sets the story up, yet again, and talk about, we were saying about Godfather Part 2, talk about a template for so many movies, kind of axing the main character in the middle of the story, and then kind of starting it over in the second half. And I think the thing that's so brilliant, I think one of the most brilliantly directed scenes in all of film, right, is when he's like bringing her body to the trunk, and you hear like a car go by or something, and for a split second you get nervous that Norman Bates is going to get caught. And in that moment, Alfred Hitchcock makes you sympathize and care for the villain, which that is so insanely hard to do. And I think that shows you just how much of a master Alfred Hitchcock was with, kind of like controlling the audience in the palm of his hand. He knew just how powerful the edit was, and just how powerful, storytelling is when you can control an audience and change their preconceived notion of characters within the film. But my goodness, just the whole psychoanalyzation of this story. It's one of the most, I will say, this film has one of the scariest shots in all of film, one of the greatest jump scares of all time, when he comes out of that room and kills Arbogast, and like him falling down the stairs. One of the most surprising moments in all of horror. But of course, the psychoanalysis of Norman Bates and how he, adopts the persona of his dead mother. Now, this film wasn't on my list, believe it or not. And that is because there is one scene, and you guys know what I'm talking about, but the scene where they basically have the whole exposition dump and explains the whole movie away, and it's an amazing film. Would have been a 10 out of 10. Would have been on my list. But that scene, I feel like, can you imagine the implications that could have been in this film if they did not explain away what was going on with Norman Bates? I think it would have made it that much more powerful, and I feel like it might have been a studio thing from my understanding, but imagine if they just trusted the audience like a little bit. You know what I mean? Like I think it would have been a perfect film, but to me, stuff like that, as I was saying with Vertigo, it kind of brings it down just a little bit. But look, this is still an amazing film. I wouldn't have it in the top 10, but I certainly understand why from a cultural standpoint, and just how influential it is on the narrative structure and on horror in general. This really was the first slasher, and it might be the best slasher, because there hasn't been this sense of nuance or understanding of character and in kind of execution in any other slasher film. And I mean, this changed the whole game. It's seen as Hitchcock's best film, and while it's not my personal favorite, a lot of you obviously feel that way, and obviously a classic that had to be on the list.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with all that. It's an awesome horror thriller screenplay, obviously, like you said, with a really interesting flow to it. Obviously, like you said, the lead role dies halfway through, but directed by a master like Hitchcock. It's a pretty perfect mystery thriller horror, whatever you want to call it. Anthony Perkins is I'm just gonna repeat a lot of stuff you just said. Anthony Perkins is amazing in it. The Bates Motel is like creepy and atmospheric. There's like a lot about the movie that's just like so influential, and it makes me want to see more directors like Hitchcock, like his sort of caliber, direct like screenplays like this. It's like just a really interesting combination to see someone like that direct like something that, like, if anyone else had done it, would have just been like some other like dumb horror movie maybe. It's awesome. Psycho's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I see we're getting into this upper echelon of the list. So like you get to that point where there's like this class of movies where you're just like, yeah, that's perfect. And that kind of says everything you need to say. I think if this was a top 10 list of like the most iconic movies, like specifically like definitive what they meant for the industry, I'd say this should be even higher.
Okay.
Well, just for what it meant for not just horror films and slasher films and how to write an economic screenplay, but also what it meant for the structuring of the film, and not only to switch characters from 1 to 2, but really they're switching between 3 characters. If the first act of the movie is revolved around Janet Leigh's character, but then that middle portion where you're just confused and you're kind of in limbo, it's really latching on to Anthony Perkins because he's the only one there. And then you get to the third act, and I'm forgetting her name, but the her second Crane sister,
played by Vera Miles.
Vera Miles, yeah. And so because of that, it's like conditioning you not to become attached. So because of that detachment that the audience has, you're allowed to kind of just have fun with it. And I think for all the iconic kind of scary and thrilling moments of it, it's also just a really fun movie. It's funny at times, and when the big twists are revealing themselves and the third act's gearing up and you're like, oh my god, is he gonna get caught? It's just like a fun time. And that's why a lot of people say Jordan Peele is a very Hitchcockian director. His films, they're emphasizing the fun factor a bit, but it's balancing that. And I think it all kind of dates back to what Hitchcock did in this film. In my opinion, I would probably say Vertigo is my favorite Hitchcock film, but this is, it's almost like Spielberg's got Jaws and Schindler's List. This is like Hitchcock has got Psycho and Vertigo, I think. So yeah, I mean, I think this is fucking awesome.
It's also another one.
Fair, man.
It's another one like I said with Star Wars. Like, it's another one where I would love to be in like the theater watching this. For the first time, like when it first came out. I can imagine it's probably like a really loud theater, lots of screaming or whatever. That sounds like a lot of fun.
Like, imagine being in a packed theater when Barbarian came out like last year and everyone's like jumping at all the moments. Like, because a movie like that is designed to just elicit these moments. And I think just like Psycho, I think Psycho was like the first movie that really was like it was giving you a movie where it's like, okay, these characters are they're playing a part. Don't get too attached. We're not gonna like sit and ponder and like do a character study. Like we're just gonna have this very economic, fun time.
Yeah.
Well, that's so interesting you say about it being so economic and fun, because I never thought Psycho was a fun movie, but like even so, like I still feel like with the segmented sort of thing, obviously films like Barbarian wouldn't exist, but I still feel like they really explore Norman Bates' psychology a lot through subtext, especially that brilliant scene when he like has dinner with her. And like it's like we all go a little mad sometimes, like scenes like that I feel really does explore. It's like gives you like an insight, and the thing to me that's always been so striking about this movie is that, because obviously she steals the money and she wants to bring it back, but the fact that it's like all this happened and it was not even motivated by money at all, and then you just get that amazing last shot of them pulling the car out of the ditch, and it's like no one even knew. Right, the money's just what was in the hotel, or did he throw it in the suitcase? I forgot.
I don't know.
No, I forgot.
I think he throws it in the suitcase. I'll double check. But still,
I hate that movie
anyway.
anyway.
Oh, come on, guys. Maybe Gus Van Sant, maybe, but No, but still, I just think, as we've all said, like just the narrative decisions that they made with the script. It can't be understated, its influence. I feel like that's what I'm saying about every single one of these movies near the top.
Yeah, sure.
Even if they're not in my top 10 besides Empire. But look, this is an amazing choice. And as you said, Brandon, yours was Vertigo, mine's Rear Window. And, obviously a lot of people, this is this because it made it above both those films. But look, you can't blame anyone for putting Psycho this high. And, once again, incredible film. And that is going to take us to number 6.
You've changed things. Forever. There's no going back. See, to them, you're just a freak. Like me.
What do we got?
Nothing. No name, no other alias. Clothing is custom. Nothing in his pockets but knives and lint.
Evening, Commissioner. Why so serious? Where is he?
People are dying. What would you have me do?
Endure. You can be the outcast. You can make the choice that no one else will face. The right choice. Gotham needs you. A little fighting here. I like that.
Then you're gonna love me.
Now that's more like it, Mr. Wayne.
It's all part of the plan.
The Dark Knight, directed by Christopher Nolan from 2008. 3 sequels in one episode. I find it interesting considering how everyone's like saying, "Oh, we need to stop having so many sequels," and like yet some of the greatest films of all times, like when sequels are great, they're some of the best films ever made. And I think this Empire Strikes Back and Godfather Part 2 are perfect examples of this. In my goodness, I think Batman Begins is a masterpiece, quite frankly. I absolutely love that. I think it's the best origin story for any superhero character ever. But once again, this is, like I was saying with Empire Strikes Back, where they take this story is just beyond mind-blowing and even better than what was present in the one before. Look, this is a film that was in my top 10. It was actually my number 3. So I think it could have been higher, but considering it came out like 15 years ago, like this is fine. Obviously, it's one of the greatest movies of all time. And a lot of credit, obviously. Let's just address the elephant in the room. The iconic posthumous Oscar-winning performance. Yeah, Maggie Gyllenhaal, yes.
Maggie Gyllenhaal.
Who is amazing, and we'll get to her in a little bit, but the Oscar-winning posthumous turn from Heath Ledger turned him into a legend. And obviously I think Brokeback Mountain helped a little bit with this, but this is the one everyone remembers. And I can't believe before this movie came out, they're like, oh, we're having, you know, the gay cowboy guy playing the Joker. I think it's just so dismissive in so many ways, but really I think when this hit the scene and everyone realized how tremendous of an actor he was, you don't find that any more than this character. I think the greatest villain in any film, and obviously one of the greatest performances of all. This is probably my second favorite performance in all of cinema after Anthony Hopkins in The Silence of the Lambs. But just the way the Joker, he's such an enigma, and I think that's what's so interesting about him. Because, like, of course, like, you know, you want to know how I got these scars, you know, and he's like, he's telling the story and you're getting invested in what he's saying, and then he tells it again and you realize he's full of shit and he's just peddling out this nonsense to throw off people who he actually is, never lets anyone in. And the other reason why he's so brilliant is just how masterful of a strategist he is, and how he's able to present that sense of anarchy and turn everybody's morals on their heads, and how he's able to use Batman's morals against him. I think that's what makes him the perfect villain. He is the complete foil. He's the opposite of everything that Batman is and what he stands for, and yet they are so similar in so many ways. It is just so brilliant what Heath Ledger does. He completely inhabits this character. And it is absolutely incredible. And of course, you know, the hospital scene, which is completely improvised, one of the greatest moments of improvisation in all of film. But just scenes like with him and of course Christian Bale, who's also awesome in this, despite the very, very thick accent aside, I really think his work is incredible here. And that interrogation scene is one of the most rich confrontations in all of film, maybe the best I've ever seen put to work on screen. But of course, everyone else in this movie populating Maggie Gyllenhaal, of course, is Rachel Dawson. This is incredible and a step up from Katie Holmes. And of course, you got to mention Gary Oldman. I feel like Heath Ledger is so good in this movie that he almost outshines everyone else, because everybody's stellar in this film, especially Oldman as Lieutenant Gordon here. And to me, the other true standout after Heath Ledger is Aaron Eckhart is Harvey Dent. And just obviously we'll get into spoilers of this one because everyone's seen this movie, let's be honest. Just his portrayal of Harvey Dent in Two-Face, and how the Joker is able to succeed in taking Gotham's White Knight and bringing him down to his level. And just how just a few small turns can really, you know, make that switch in someone and really just turn their whole perspective and life upside down. I love his role in this film, and I think he almost doesn't get enough credit when it comes to his performance in this, but he's absolutely incredible. But just, as I said, just the way this really pushes the character of Batman to greater emotional heights that Batman Begins couldn't dream of, and just the moral quandaries that this film explores, you know, like when the chips are down, you know, you'll see, you know, these civilized people, you know, eat each other up. And I think it goes to show just, and yet again, like just how you see these preconceived notions, like it's the boat scene with the bomb, I think is beyond brilliant, because you see all these, you know, supposedly more like these morally high standing people immediately turn on criminals who they're like, oh, they've had their chance, but the criminals are the one who throws the remote out of the boat. Like, I don't think Christopher Nolan has ever gotten to that level of brilliance ever again like he did in this film. And he's a brilliant filmmaker, one of my favorites for sure, as I'm sure you guys can agree as well. But I just think the substance here, it really is a Shakespearean level tragedy, what occurs with these three central characters of Bruce Wayne, the Joker, and Harvey Dent. It is one of the most complex stories ever told. So much, and of course, so many great action set sequences, like that opening bank robbery. Gotta love that scene, and of course, so many, like the bike chase. I mean, there's so many moments you could point out in this film as being iconic, and this just came out like 15 years ago, and yet everyone holds it in such high regard. This is the definition of a modern classic, and I think the fact that it's number 6 on this list really is a testament to that.
I I mean, I could go on for a while about
Please
the Dark
do.
Knight. It's I mean, yeah, I mean, just like the whole concept, like taking like Batman characters and like fitting all of this, like this whole world, Gotham City and everything, and like fitting it into like the context of this like police procedural, like Michael Mann-esque, like cops and robbers movie. It's like it's the type of movie that I can like always put on. I have like a few, you have like a few different movies, like some of your favorites, where it's like I can put this on at any time and probably just like watch the whole thing like right now. This is like definitely one of them. I think like there's like a certain point of the movie where it really turns on too. Like I think it's like from when Harvey Dent turns himself in to like the rest of the movie, pretty much. It's just like non-stop. It is like it's so engaging. I always think of Batman and Gordon choosing to go after Dent and Rachel. Realize, but then they realize like the Joker switched their locations, and like
one of the best plot twists of all time.
Yeah, it's like you have to sit down and think you're sitting down after that scene. You're like, wow, this is like a riveting drama. But then you're like, this is like a Batman movie. Like, this is a Batman movie. Like, it's insane. It's so good. Everything about it is just so good. I love it. I love this movie.
Yeah, it's so cool how it kind of definitively ends the like best comic book movie of all time argument.
Question.
Like there's no point of like ever doing that conversation ever because that this movie exists.
Yeah,
and I just think it's so awesome that there's like such a clear definitive classic that was released during our lifetime. Like because we can all say like Parasite, Everything Everywhere All at Once, or one of the Lord of the Rings movies, No Country for Old Men. I don't know, but I think The Dark Knight is definitely our generation's, dare I say, Godfather 2, where it's
Godfather,
Yeah,
or you mean sequel wise? Yeah, okay.
Well, because it's that sequel. Yeah, like it's a movie that like it didn't need to kind of get spread because of word of mouth, because everyone was going to see it anyway because of Batman Begins. So it was one of those classic examples of everyone's excited for it, everyone goes to see it, and it exceeds everyone's expectations. And it is so many ways it's like the definitive action movie of our generation too. I mean, I always think back to like the score,
Hans Zimmer,
Joker's theme or Batman's theme or the ending theme that kind of closes out the film. Like I actually think it's one of my favorite scores ever.
Sure.
And it just adds to that like consistent, relentless engagement that the movie has. I mean, it just doesn't stop, and it's I think what a lot of superhero movies tend to forget about is how important it is to involve the common folk or the people that are involved. Whereas I know this phrase gets thrown up like the people of Gotham City feel like a character. No, but in this movie there actually are legit characters, like on the boat, where I mean that's actually my favorite sequence of the entire movie. Is that whole finale with the boat, because you're focusing on those city characters and you're seeing either the effects that Batman and Joker have had on them or just the Gotham City as a whole. And then I actually think my other favorite scene in the movie is the final standoff between Dent as Two-Face, Gordon, and so it's really my two favorite scenes in the movie actually aren't with Heath Ledger, who I think is probably given the best acting performance I've ever seen. Sure. Because I can't think of any other acting performance where I look at it and I'm like, I don't effing see the original human. I think Bryan Cranston as like season 4 Walter White is maybe the one where I'm like, wait, that's Bryan Cranston, like he just dealt with the makeup, interesting. Whereas like Heath Ledger, if you look at him with the black eyeshadow and the prosthetic scars in the hair, and then you look at a photo from him like before the makeup chair, you're like, dude, what?
Yeah, it's not even and it's not even that much makeup either, but it's like it like disappears. It's crazy.
And it's cool how like it was just something that like it's not true to the comics, but I think it makes him that more interesting,
Yeah, and then you look at other people that have played the Joker or other characters where they'll be doused in makeup, and you're like, oh, well, that's that actor doing this type of a thing. Like, I remember my mom saw Infinity War, and she's like, is that Josh Brolin as Thanos? Like, you could just tell, like, that he had that Josh Brolin quality. Whereas, like, with Heath Ledger, you're like, how the hell is that voice coming out of the guy that was in those other movies that I saw? It's so brilliant. Like, and to this day, everyone's still like, how the hell did he do that? Like, that is, and it's possibly the best performance ever. But yeah, it's like an epic crime saga. The action's fantastic. It leaves you on like a downer, but also this really hopeful note where you're like, oh my god, this is like really, like, I don't know what to feel about like Batman, doing this decision. And yeah, it really is like, yeah, it's one of the best movies ever, definitely.
It's he's the hero Gotham deserves, but not the one they need right now. I mean, I think that line really says it all. And yeah, it's just incredible. Like you're saying, comic book movies, this really puts it to bed. This is so much more than the sum of its parts. And I think personally the greatest sequel ever made. And it is the highest. I think, yeah, it is the highest film from our lifetime that made the list. And I think definitely like the best film to come out in our lifetime. I almost without question. It's one of those films that's unanimously praised from top to bottom, as it should be. It's just such a complex drama. There's so many layers to this film that are still unbelievable that this was conceived and adapted to the screen. I don't think there's ever going to be anything like this. I don't think there's ever going to be, even if more actors, if Joaquin Phoenix wins another Oscar for playing Joker, I still don't think there's going to be another Joker performance at this level, or any performance at this level to come after, because I mean, this is one of the single-handedly greatest performances in the history of all of cinema.
Even Joaquin Phoenix, he had his moments where it's like, okay, I could tell you're trying to be all weird and I'm so crazy. Like, you never get that with like Heath Ledger at all. Like, he just feels like, oh yeah, this is just this guy. He's just like a weird guy. And it's like, that's like really hard to do, like a character also, that's like odd and like not come off as like, I can tell he's trying to be weird.
Like with a lot of those type of flashier performances, like it can feel either hammy or it can feel like, okay, you're really going for like you're trying to be crazy, like you're chaos incarnate. Whereas like Heath Ledger's, I mean, I think a big thing too is his voice. It's so specific, but it's very consistent. Like, like when he goes low, he has a specific lower register and a specific higher register, and when he gets menacing, he has a specific menacing tone. Whereas a lot of the other guys that have either played this role or similar roles or just acting in general, their voice is just like all over the place. They're just like doing anything in like a given moment. Whereas like he was just this very consistent, like he was a very real individual, and he wasn't over the moon with like cracking jokes here and there. But whenever
he's funny,
crack a joke, he was funny, and
he's kind of like a wise guy.
Let's put a smile on that face.
Or like when the guy goes like, "Oh, you think you could just steal from us and walk away?" Yeah, like it's just like that, like little stuff.
And I thought my jokes were bad.
Or like when he first sees like Maggie Gyllenhaal's character, and he just goes like, "Oh," and he like combs his hair back briefly, like stuff like that. It's like brilliant.
Yeah, like when he walks into that first meeting, and he's kind of like fake laughing, like the who There's like so many little things about the character. His little tics, like the lip or the tongue thing when he keeps like licking his lips. He's like perfect in that movie.
And I love that part that you mentioned, the ooh ee ha.
And the fact that no, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say it's like he's playing into the fact that the audience like knows that like, oh, this is the Joker, and like
he's the laughing guy,
just like sarcastic,
and the fact that like he turned the Joker into like an Oscar Beatty role. Like everyone plays the Joker now. Ooh, they're going to get nominated for an Oscar. It's a comic book movie. It's incredible, but that's the thing about, and obviously the biggest Best Picture snub in the history of the Academy, up there would Do the Right Thing. I think the fact that they single-handedly changed the nominees to 10 that year was insane, and they actually said this would have been number 6 if there had been that many nominees. But really, I think if they went back and pulled this again, this would have won. I think that shows you just how impactful this film was upon release, that the Academy of Motion Pictures, Arts and Sciences changed the rules because this wasn't nominated. Because, as we said, this is more than a comic book movie. This is I guess it really is a genre-defining masterpiece and really one of the most defining moments of the 21st century, especially in cinema. And so, yeah, guys, that's going to wrap it up for this episode. I think now you probably have a good idea of what's in the top 5, so leave your comments down below if you're kind of figuring out what it is. But hey, guys, thank you so much for coming on. It's always delightful whenever we get together and talk movies and just, talk in general. So tell the good people on YouTube where they can find you at.
Well, I guess you can find Rattle Cage Productions. There's a YouTube channel. We post some stuff on there, some camera tests. We have like a little sort of like fake movie review show on there. And yeah, I mean, that's all I got to plug, really. I don't really use other social media stuff, so
yeah, we both got Rattle Cage Productions where we got some stuff going on, but other than that, off the grid.
Yeah.
Oh wow. Okay. Well, hey.
Secret.
I guess in that case, you gotta find these guys.
Even though I have a public Instagram, whatever.
Yeah. Well, if we want to plug that, we can put it in the description below. It's up to you. But regardless, you gotta check these guys out. Take a look at what they're doing. They have some pretty interesting stuff over there at Rattle Cage Productions. And of course, you gotta smash the like button on this video and subscribe to this channel if you haven't already, because I know maybe some people see this and they're like, "Oh, top 10 greatest movies of all time. What do these people have to say?" And if that is the case, thank you for hopping on. I hope you maybe go back and watch the rest of this and tune in for the next episode. I just can't believe that we're almost to the finish line. This has been a hassle getting this done, but definitely a labor of love to me, and I hope to all those involved. So thank you for your continued support, and I cannot wait to unveil what the top 5 of the Nathaniel Ahart's and Company's top 100 greatest films are. So be on the lookout, and until then, take it easy, guys.